See, we are going to go out to, who are we going out to right now? We're going out to Scott. Speaking of the DNC, he is at the United Center right now. And Scott has been out there this morning and trying to talk to some people to get some perspective. Who'd you catch this time, Scott?
Well, Sylvia, if I threw the name Lee McGowan at you, you might scratch your head and say, I'm not sure I know who she is. If I said PoliticsGirl, you and about 2 million other people would probably know. She's huge on Twitter or X, on a podcast, on TikTok, on YouTube, and she's here amongst a phalanx, if you will, of social media influencers who have converged on the United Center for this Democratic National Convention. So PoliticsGirl, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us. What is your impression of what you've seen so far?
Well, I think the whole impression, Scott, is that this is a different Democratic Party. It's a refreshed Democratic Party. And this is coming from someone who is a huge Joe Biden fan. But the energy that is coming out of this party right now, the hope, the joy, the we don't all have to hate each other thing. You know, go back to your Thanksgiving dinner, as Tim Walz said, and don't fight with everyone the whole time. I think everyone's ready for that.
I think when it comes to politics, a lot of people feel like it's an old person's game, and it's mom and dad and grandma who care. It's not the kids, and most of the kids are on these all day long. What are you hearing about this election, particularly about what's happened in the past month, this groundswell of support for Kamala Harris and what's been happening on the Democratic side?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say politics is not an old person's game. You know, not caring about politics doesn't mean politics doesn't care about you, right? If you're not paying attention to politics, they're still making decisions that affect every single part of your life. So you better tune in, right? I think one of the most exciting things about the change in ticket is that people have sort of turned their attention back to something that is new and fresh and exciting at a time where they really have to, because the contrast between what the two Americas were being offered is so distinct that we need as many people as possible right now paying attention. And so the kids that are on their phone, that's one of the reasons I started my whole thing on social media in the first place, because you got to reach people where they are.
Well, when we hear from the mainstream media about what is of primary concern for voters, we talk about the price of groceries. Sure. We talk about the fact that a lot of young people worry that they'll never be able to afford a home, a brand new car. What are you hearing from TikTokers? What are they talking about?
Well, TikTokers are surprisingly very dialed in. I think it's probably a very political space and people don't realize it. I think people honestly truly care about moving the country forward. I think economy is always going to be a big issue, but I think one of the things we forget with women's rights being removed from us all over the country is that abortion is a kitchen table issue. How many people are sitting at your kitchen table is an economic issue. So watching red states strip women of their rights and hearing about potentially having, you know, a national abortion ban, and then we're talking about getting rid of IVF, that's not having children, and then we're talking about getting rid of contraception, that's having children you don't want to have, that is all an economic issue. And if you're online and you are a young person, you're looking at your future and how you're going to set up your family and how you're going to have your home that I hope you can afford, but also how many people are going to be sitting at that table. So I think taking these kind of rights from women is really making people fired up that they don't want to go down that path.
Is that the galvanizing issue? How much of it also is, this is only the second time we've had a woman who's gotten her party's nomination for president?
I know, Scott, took too long. We're quite clever if you put us out there. I think the thing is that what you have is a culmination of two things at the same time, right? I think we were all ready for a woman president with Hillary Clinton. We were all prepared. We were all excited. And it was heartbreaking for a lot of women in America to watch what happened. But now we're in a position where, and like I said, I would have happily voted for Joe Biden. I would have happily voted for a white man once again. And yet we're given this opportunity right when women's rights are being told they can be second-class citizens, where we're talking about getting rid of divorce. We're talking about sticking women back in marriages that they can't get out of, having children they can't afford. And then you say we're going to put a woman on the top of the ticket, and guess what she's not going to ignore? Women's rights.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen tonight. This has been dubbed sort of the thank you, Joe, goodbye night, and,
Sure.
and a passing of the torch, if you will. Do young people understand the sacrifice that Joe Biden has made in sort of passing the torch to Kamala Harris?
I don't think most people understand the sacrifice Joe Biden made, but I think Joe Biden always planned to be a one-term president. That was really his goal. He said from the beginning he wanted to be a bridge from one generation to the next, and I don't think he planned to have Donald Trump run again. So I think the thing was, if you are an incumbent in this nation, you have a far better chance of winning. And he has already beaten Trump before, so he was willing to take one for the team and do it again. But that was never his goal. It was never about Joe Biden. It was about America and what's best for America. And when it turned out that passing the torch would be best for America, he was ready and willing to do that. So honestly, he deserves the thanks he's going to get. He deserves the praise he should get. I think he's going to go down in history as one of the best presidents we ever had, but it's going to be something we see from a far broader lens. I think where people are going to look back at the Joe Biden years and think, gosh, he did so much, and if we elect Kamala Harris to move that agenda forward, we can only get so much more.
I ask this because you live in my hometown of Los Angeles. You've come here where the stigma in Chicago is, oh, are they going to be able to pull this off without mass rioting and violence? When you came here from Los Angeles, was there trepidation on your part and on your followers' part?
Honestly, Scott, no. I really believe that what we're feeling in America right now is a completely different version of politics. I think the American carnage years, the years of Trump, the years of the COVID, the insurrection on January 6th, the Stop the Steal, then Trump's all of his rallies, and then the trials, and then the convictions. I think people are exhausted. I think they are truly exhausted across America, red, white, and blue, all of us. And I think that what we're being offered here is something to get us out of that. And I think people are so excited about it. There's always going to be naysayers. There's obviously protesters that are around, but that's not the main feeling. The main feeling is hope and joy and forward-thinking momentum, and I'm here for all of it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a pop culture question, because I know people have been tracking Taylor Swift through her European tour. Could she possibly make a quick stop here in Chicago? Beyonce's Freedom song has become the battle cry of the Harris campaign. Does the campaign need some sort of surprise guest from somebody, iconic this week?
No, I don't think they do at all. I mean, if someone came, that would be wonderful. But I don't think they need it at all. I think the thing is that what America needs is strong leadership that isn't going off the deep end every 4 seconds. I think people would love to live their life without having to be like, what happened? Oh my God. People would love to live their lives again without politics being in every single aspect of it. Even though it's important we pay attention, I don't think we want to have to pay attention all the time. Taylor Swift comes, yay for us. I mean, Donald Trump did just put up that thing on Truth Social saying Taylor Swift was voting for him. I think that's going to get a real pushback on her team's department, but I don't think it needs some big hoo-ha to say pay attention to us, because I think ultimately the star here is Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and America itself.
And then finally, between now and November, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris is going to need to energize young people and women. What do they need to do to get those people that are following you on YouTube and following you on TikTok on board and showing up on Election Day?
I think the thing is, one of the reasons people follow me is because I speak to normal people in a normal way. I don't try and make myself sound smart. I want my audience to feel smart. I want them to leave my podcast. I want them to leave my rants. I want them to read my book in September when it comes out.
Plug it.
Yeah, it's called A Return to Common Sense. And because that's what I think we should do. I think we need to return to common sense. And I think one of the best ways to reach Americans, especially Americans that aren't paying attention to politics, is just to talk to them in a regular way and say, here are the things that matter, here's why it matters, here's why I care. It's how I wrote the book, it's how I do the rants, and it's how I do the podcast. And I think that's what the campaigns have to do. I don't think Donald Trump is great at that this time around. I think he was great the first time around at really meeting people where they were, and I think this time it's all sour grapes, and people are tired of sour grapes.
Leigh McGowan, a.k.a. PoliticsGirl. You can find her on TikTok. You can find her on her podcast. Thank you so much for your time. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Let's send it back to the studio.